When we first went to Jemseg, the thing I found myself doing as we drove down to the site area, there was a marina over on the left, and there was the odd powerboat going up and down the channel there. But the far shoreline is still the Grand Lake Meadows, and very sort of primordial looking, river edge there, to be perfectly honest. So what I did was I really tried to put myself at another time and just imagine what a village on that site might actually look like.
I remember it was a very sort of like one of those late summer days. It was warm and sunny, and there were frogs and snakes. And I remember, and all sorts of wildlife and critters, and the river was flowing by. It was beautiful. But I remember being struck by that feeling that something's coming. And in a sense, that this whole system was going to be so impacted.
Well, essentially we learned that over a rather large span of time, Jemseg was a very important, I'm going to say community site. A lot of people want to say village site. I think it probably exceeded that by a great deal. Given what we found out about artifacts being found on the periphery of the site and in other places well away, that Jemseg was probably a relatively thriving community that took advantage of the resources of the river at that point.
So I was approached about being involved because I was going to be on leave from doing my PhD for a year. And so it was sort of framed to me that there was this site, it was fairly shallow, it would be fairly straightforward to work on, and there would be this really exciting opportunity to collaborate with First Nations communities and individuals in the work.
Essentially, from the DOT point of view, their objective was to finish the highway and put in the 4-lane highway. From our perspective, it was really, okay, there's going to be a conflict here, so can we use this as a method of establishing a better relationship with First Nations communities, particularly with the Wolastoqiyik community? Can we work out a way of working together on things?
There hasn't ever really been a good relationship between archaeologists and Indigenous people, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's non-Indigenous people that are digging up that past and learning and interpreting.
And it's my contention that we should be in charge of our story, especially here in New Brunswick. We're not under glass, we're still living people. So if there's anything to be told about our history, we should be the people telling the story.
The immediate obstacle that we were confronted with, and this was probably the underlying thing for everything, was the timeline. So we were brought on August 26th, and we were told we had till May 15th when construction would begin. Well, this seems like a long time, except that we have a Canadian winter in the middle of all of that. And archaeology has always been a summer endeavor. It's something that you have to do when the ground is thawed. And we'd never imagined doing a project outside of that.
We realized right away that we had a fairly extensive area that we wanted to work with there. And we also had some logistic issues of the dig going into the winter time. Ground was freezing, and we had some people working with us that were pretty good, people like Tim McAvee and of course Susan, who essentially said, look, we can put tents down. And these portable kind of garage things that you've seen. So we ended up getting them with large construction heaters and that sort of thing and thawing ground out and then trying to do proper archaeological work over an area. So you can imagine we sort of have to put the tents down and work on a particular area and then move the tent some and thaw the ground and work on another area.
In the previous model of working, it was kind of black and white. I mean, archaeologists were doing it and then giving the results to the community, as opposed to it's the community who are responsible for it, and it's their history. And so you can see that throughout the project there was a greater involvement on behalf of the community in their history, rather than an archaeologist giving it to them.
I was, of course, as project manager, extremely interested in getting as many Aboriginal people on the site as we could, and we did at most points. I think we had upwards of 20 people involved. Now this is this isn't an easy thing with no background in archaeology, right? You're going to have one archaeologist to maybe 4 or 5 people working in these areas, and just getting them to to do the methodology properly, make sure things are recorded properly, make sure things don't leave the site that may potentially offer information to ultimately the interpretation of what's happening at the site.
We hired from First Nations community. So we over the next month or so, we went from our plans of having a crew of 12 to 15 to a crew of 125, 75% of which were from First Nations communities. And so we hired, the other 25% were people who had archaeological background, but were also open to this kind of rethink. And so instead of making those people supervisors and the First Nations people crew, we looked at the people who we were hiring, and there were people who had years and years of experience and knowledge from First Nations communities, not necessarily in archaeology, but in all sorts of fields. And so we made them co-supervisors.
And what they really wanted to do was just secure a couple of footprints for some of the support structures for this proposed bridge. The engineers were adamant that the particular alignment they wanted really should be through Jumseg. And interestingly enough, we heard from the province that they wouldn't allow that to happen if there was actually burial sites there. I remember saying that on behalf of Kingsclere First Nation, I did not think that that was a burial. And I remember Karen Purley from Tobic saying, I think it's a burial. And immediately deciding that I had to agree with Karen. I wasn't going to make an argument that it wasn't. And so Susan, of course, had to make that decision, of shutting down pretty much what we were doing. Unfortunately, when it came to an end, it was pretty much just pack our stuff up and go home.
There was really one piece that I was really drawn to. It was a scraper, and the colors on it were just amazing. And I mean, I could still see the picture of, not even the picture, I could see it in my head. It's hard to explain it, but I remember seeing that piece and thinking, somebody made this, and look at the beautiful object that they made, right? And how much time and energy went into it. And it's a small little thumbnail scraper, but it had made a really big impact on me.
But if you think about standing on the shoreline of an ancient river and pick up an artifact that was made by your ancestor, right? It physically ties you into the land. It's this incredible spiritual feeling of I'm here, we're still here. It just gives authenticity to all the stories of your ancient presence on the land.